a neighborhood known for its tree-lined streets and tightly knit families, the promise of safety was shattered on a crisp autumn morning. Emergency lights flickered against the pale gray sky as a crime scene unfolded in one of the town's most pristine streets. Neighbors gathered behind yellow police tape, their faces a mix of shock and fear. Inside the two-story brick house, investigators found the lifeless body of 38-year-old Rachel Cooper, the wife of a respected local businessman. Rachel was discovered in the living room, the scene disturbingly out of place in its orderliness, except for the single fatal blow that ended her life. At first glance, the crime appeared to be a burglary gone wrong, but seasoned detectives quickly sensed something more sinister at play. Rachel's husband, Jack Cooper, stood outside, pale and trembling, answering the rapid-fire questions of responding officers. But his unease wasn't just the shock of losing his wife. Jack's concealed past with a woman next door was about to surface, unraveling a web of secrets, betrayals, and violence that no one saw coming. What could drive someone to cross the lines of trust and morality so completely? The answer, as investigators would soon discover, lay buried in years of hidden deception. New Rochelle, a picturesque suburb just north of New York City, had long been considered an ideal place to raise a family. With its charming neighborhoods, excellent schools, and sense of community, it was the perfect escape for those seeking tranquility. Among its residents were Jack and Rachel Cooper, a seemingly perfect couple living in a well-maintained brick colonial house on Maple Lane. Married for over a decade, Jack was a successful entrepreneur who managed a chain of fitness centers, while Rachel was a devoted wife and mother known for her active role in the community. Their neighbors, including the enigmatic Emily Jennings and her husband Mark, completed the idyllic suburban picture. Emily, a striking woman with a magnetic presence, often drew attention, though her own marriage appeared far from perfect. She and Rachel shared a cordial, if not particularly close, relationship. Despite the calm veneer of suburban life, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Emily's interactions with Jack, often brief and discreet, began to catch the eye of neighbors, though no one could have guessed their significance. What seemed like ordinary pleasantries hid the beginnings of a dangerous connection, one that would ultimately turn this quiet neighborhood into the scene of a chilling crime. It was a Monday evening when the crime unfolded, a night that began like any other in the quiet suburb of New Rochelle. Rachel Cooper had spent the day running errands and preparing for a community fundraiser she was organizing. By 7:00 p.m., she was home, her children upstairs finishing homework, and Jack Cooper was in his home office, engrossed in emails. On the surface, it was a picture of domestic normalcy. By 8:15 p.m., neighbors reported hearing a loud crash followed by a muffled shout coming from the Cooper residence. One witness, an elderly man walking his dog, noted the sound but dismissed it as household noise. The lights in the Cooper home remained on, and nothing seemed outwardly amiss until the next morning. At 6:45 a.m., a frantic call to 911 was made by Jack Cooper. In a trembling voice, he reported finding his wife unresponsive in the living room. Emergency services arrived swiftly, but Rachel was pronounced dead on the scene. The cause of death was immediately apparent: a blunt force trauma to the back of her head. Blood pooled beneath her, staining the otherwise pristine cream carpet, with a shattered glass vase lying nearby, presumably the weapon. Jack's account of the events was puzzling. He claimed to have fallen asleep in his office, waking only in the early hours to discover Rachel. He insisted he hadn't heard anything unusual and was adamant that his wife had no enemies. However, inconsistencies in his demeanor and timeline raised immediate suspicions. The children, still in shock, were questioned briefly. They had heard nothing during the night, tucked away in their bedrooms with the door closed. Meanwhile, the house showed no signs of forced entry, and Rachel's belongings appeared untouched. A robbery gone wrong was quickly ruled out, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. As officers canvassed the neighborhood, the name Emily Jennings surfaced repeatedly. Several neighbors mentioned her frequent interactions with Jack and noted an argument between her and Rachel just weeks prior. Emily's home, just 2 doors down, became the next focus of attention. When questioned, Emily seemed cooperative but strangely distant, brushing off her connection to the Coopers as mere neighborly acquaintance. The crime scene itself offered little clarity. Forensic analysis confirmed the vase as the murder weapon, but it bore no fingerprints. Instead, traces of latex residue suggested gloves were used, indicating premeditation. Further examination revealed Rachel had defensive wounds on her hands, implying a struggle, a chilling detail that hinted at her final moments. By the second day of the investigation, Jack's seemingly benign past began to unravel. Bank records showed a series of undisclosed withdrawals, each coinciding with trips he claimed were for business. When pressed, Jack's explanations were vague and his agitation grew. Investigators soon uncovered something far more damning. Phone records revealing late-night calls and texts between Jack and Emily, the nature of which pointed to an affair. The narrative shifted. Was Rachel's murder an act of jealous rage, a crime of passion stemming from the affair? Or was it something more calculated, involving the woman next door? With no clear suspect and mounting evidence, the puzzle of what happened that night grew increasingly complex, leaving a stunned community desperate for answers. The investigation began in earnest as detectives meticulously combed through the Cooper residence for any clue that could shed light on Rachel's murder. The crime scene, despite its limited evidence, spoke volumes. The shattered vase was bagged for analysis, along with Rachel's clothing and any items that might hold DNA or trace evidence. Investigators noted the lack of forced entry, indicating that Rachel likely knew her killer, or that someone had easy access to the house. Detective Sarah Holt, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for unraveling even the most perplexing cases, took the lead. She focused on piecing together a timeline of events leading up to Rachel's death. Jack's version of events was scrutinized first. His claim of falling asleep in his office didn't align with forensic evidence showing Rachel had been killed around 8:30 p.m., a time when Jack was supposedly awake and in the house. When asked why he didn't hear the struggle or the crash of the vase, his response wavered, adding to the mounting suspicions. The first breakthrough came from the children's nanny, who, during a routine interview, revealed a chilling detail. She mentioned overhearing Rachel arguing with Jack over Emily Jennings just days before the murder. Rachel had confronted Jack about a suspicious text message she found on his phone, and the fight had ended with Rachel threatening to confront Emily directly. This revelation shifted the investigation's focus firmly onto Emily. Detectives turned their attention to Emily Jennings, who had become increasingly evasive in her interactions with the police. Phone records revealed over 50 calls and text messages exchanged between Jack and Emily in the month leading up to Rachel's death, including several on the night of the murder. When questioned, Emily downplayed the communication, insisting it was about neighborhood events and nothing more. However, her nervous demeanor betrayed her. Further digging unearthed a sordid history between Jack and Emily. They had been involved in a clandestine affair for nearly a year, meeting in secret while their spouses remained unaware. Witness statements confirmed seeing the two together at odd hours, often in Jack's car parked away from their homes. What began as a connection of convenience had spiraled into something far more dangerous, with Rachel's discovery of their relationship threatening to expose it all. Forensic analysis provided another key piece of evidence. Traces of Emily's hair were found on a scarf discovered near Rachel's body, a scarf that didn't belong to the Cooper household. When confronted with this discovery, Emily claimed she had been inside the house earlier that day for a casual visit, but neighbors contradicted her, stating they hadn't seen her enter or leave the property that day. Meanwhile, Jack's financial records revealed a trail of troubling activity. Detectives uncovered payments made to a private account linked to Emily, disguised as business expenses. These payments totaled tens of thousands of dollars, hinting at a potentially deeper motive. Was this money part of a plan to keep Emily silent, or something even more sinister? The investigation gained further momentum when a neighbor's home security camera provided unexpected footage. The camera, which partially captured the street outside the Coopers' home, showed Emily entering the house on the evening of the murder. She was seen leaving less than an hour later, clutching what appeared to be a pair of gloves. Detective Holt pressed Emily on the footage, and her story began to crumble. She admitted to visiting the Cooper home that night but claimed she left after a brief argument with Rachel. However, the timeline of her visit and the defensive wounds on Rachel's hands painted a different picture, one of a violent struggle that ended in tragedy. Jack, too, was far from exonerated. His shifting alibi, combined with the discovery of the affair and his financial dealings, positioned him as a possible co-conspirator. Detectives theorized that Jack, desperate to maintain his double life, could have orchestrated the murder or aided in its aftermath. The final piece of the puzzle came from a surprising source. A neighbor, who had been hesitant to come forward, revealed hearing two distinct voices arguing inside the Cooper home on the night of the murder. The voices, they claimed, belonged to Rachel and Emily. Moments later, the crash of the vase was heard, followed by silence. With the evidence mounting against both Jack and Emily, the investigation reached a critical juncture. Detectives had uncovered a web of lies, infidelity, and financial deceit, but the question remained: who delivered the fatal blow? Was this a crime of passion, or a calculated act of desperation? As the pieces fell into place, it became clear that the answers lay not just in the evidence, but in the courtroom, where the truth would finally be revealed. As the investigation seemed to be narrowing its focus on Jack and Emily, a startling revelation shifted the case in an entirely new direction. The forensic team, while re-examining evidence collected from the Cooper residence, discovered something previously overlooked: a faint, partial shoe print near the scene of the crime. The tread pattern didn't match anything in Jack or Rachel's wardrobe, or Emily's for that matter. This suggested that a third party might have been present on the night of the murder. Detective Sarah Holt ordered a deeper dive into the couple's social and professional circles. This led to the discovery of an unexpected connection. Jack's business dealings weren't as above board as they appeared. An anonymous tip led detectives to a former business associate, Michael Hayes, who had been embroiled in a financial dispute with Jack. Hayes, who had been publicly vocal about feeling betrayed by Jack, had seemingly disappeared from the picture months before the murder, but phone records placed him near the Cooper home on the night of Rachel's death. Confronting Hayes opened a Pandora's box of hidden grudges and motives. Hayes admitted he had visited the neighborhood that evening, claiming it was merely to have a word with Jack. He denied entering the house but couldn't account for the matching shoe tread found at the crime scene. Further forensic analysis revealed the shoe print bore traces of fresh soil, which matched the type found in Hayes's backyard garden. Meanwhile, another revelation emerged from Emily Jennings' digital footprint. Investigators discovered deleted emails between Emily and an anonymous account traced back to Hayes. The content was damning. Emily and Hayes had been in communication about Jack, discussing ways to handle the situation after Rachel discovered the affair. Though Emily insisted these emails were misunderstood and unrelated to the crime, the correspondence painted a picture of two people desperate to protect their secrets. The next twist came from a surprising source: Rachel herself. In a safe deposit box registered in Rachel's name, detectives uncovered a collection of documents, including a handwritten letter addressed to a lawyer. The letter detailed her suspicions about Jack's affair and hinted at plans to file for divorce. But it also included something far more incriminating: a record of Jack's financial dealings that implicated him in embezzlement from his own company. Rachel had uncovered Jack's illegal activities and was preparing to use the evidence against him in court. With this new information, a chilling theory began to take shape. Could Jack, fearing both personal and professional ruin, have conspired with Emily to eliminate Rachel? Or had Emily taken matters into her own hands, enlisting Hayes to carry out the crime? The evidence against Jack continued to mount. Bank statements revealed that large sums of money had been funneled to a shell account linked to Hayes, suggesting a possible payment for his involvement. However, Jack maintained his innocence, claiming he had no knowledge of the transactions. His increasingly erratic behavior during questioning only deepened suspicions, but there was still no direct evidence tying him to the murder. Emily, too, found herself backed into a corner. Her alibi, already shaky, collapsed entirely when a neighbor came forward with new testimony. On the night of the murder, the neighbor had seen Emily pacing outside the Cooper home, clutching her phone and looking visibly distressed. Moments later, she was seen entering the house, just minutes before the estimated time of Rachel's death. But the most shocking revelation came when Michael Hayes unexpectedly confessed, not to the murder itself, but to being present in the house. Hayes claimed he had been lured there by Emily, who had told him that Jack needed help confronting Rachel. Hayes described arriving at the scene to find Rachel already dead and Emily standing over her body, the broken vase at her feet. He insisted he had no involvement in the act itself, but had been coerced into helping Emily stage the scene. This confession shifted the narrative once again. Emily now faced allegations of orchestrating the murder, but her motive was unclear. Was it jealousy, desperation, or a calculated attempt to protect her affair and her connection to Jack? And where did Jack truly fit into the puzzle? His financial ties to Hayes and his erratic behavior made him a suspect, but no solid evidence placed him at the scene during the critical moments. The revelations left investigators and the public reeling. The once clear case had spiraled into a labyrinth of secrets, lies, and shifting alliances. What began as a simple affair had unraveled into a deadly web of betrayal, with no shortage of suspects or motives. As the case headed to court, one thing was certain. The truth behind Rachel Cooper's death was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The legal battle that followed Rachel Cooper's murder was as complex as the investigation itself. Prosecutors charged Emily Jennings with first-degree murder, alleging she had struck the fatal blow in a fit of rage after Rachel confronted her about the affair. Jack Cooper was also indicted, facing charges of conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice. Michael Hayes, the unexpected third party, was charged as an accessory after the fact for his admitted role in staging the scene. The trial began in a packed courtroom, with the prosecution laying out its case against Emily. They argued that Emily had the motive, means, and opportunity. Her affair with Jack, combined with Rachel's impending divorce and the threat of exposure, painted a picture of desperation. Prosecutors pointed to the neighbor's testimony placing Emily at the scene, the deleted emails with Michael Hayes, and the forensic evidence of her hair on the scarf found near Rachel's body. They described her as a woman willing to go to any lengths to protect herself. Emily's defense team painted a very different picture. They claimed she had been framed, arguing that Michael Hayes had killed Rachel in a premeditated act, possibly at Jack's behest. Emily's lawyer pointed out Hayes' financial connections to Jack and his confession of being present in the house, suggesting he had more involvement than he admitted. They portrayed Emily as a victim of circumstance, caught between two manipulative men and a tragic set of events. Jack Cooper's trial ran concurrently, with prosecutors focusing on his financial misconduct and ties to both Emily and Hayes. They argued that Jack, fearing the collapse of his career and public disgrace, had orchestrated Rachel's murder to silence her. His financial transactions to Hayes and his increasingly erratic behavior during the investigation became key points of evidence. However, Jack's defense team countered with claims that he was merely an adulterous husband, not a murderer, and that the payments to Hayes were unrelated to the crime. The courtroom drama escalated when Hayes himself took the stand. In a surprise move, the prosecution called him as a witness, hoping his testimony would clarify Emily's role. Instead, Hayes cast doubt on everyone involved. He reiterated his claim of being coerced by Emily, but admitted that Jack had contacted him weeks earlier, offering him a lucrative job, with no further details. His vague and self-serving testimony left both jurors and attorneys frustrated, adding more questions than answers. Throughout the trial, Rachel's family sat silently in the gallery, seeking justice for a beloved wife and mother. The prosecution closed its arguments by emphasizing the overwhelming evidence against Emily and Jack, urging the jury to see through their shifting stories and calculated deceptions. They described Rachel's murder as a cold, calculated act driven by selfishness and greed. The defense teams for Emily and Jack delivered emotional closing statements, portraying their clients as scapegoats in a case riddled with uncertainty. Emily's lawyer reminded the jury of the lack of direct evidence tying her to the murder, while Jack's attorney framed him as a flawed man but not a criminal mastermind. Both teams emphasized the inconsistencies in Michael Hayes' account, suggesting he was the true culprit. After weeks of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Emily Jennings was found guilty of second-degree murder, with the court acknowledging her role in Rachel's death but not premeditation. She was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Jack Cooper, charged with conspiracy and obstruction, received a 15-year sentence. Michael Hayes, whose involvement was murky at best, was given a reduced sentence of 5 years for his cooperation and role as an accessory. The trial's conclusion brought some measure of closure, but the lingering questions about the true sequence of events continued to haunt Rachel's loved ones. Was the jury right in convicting Emily as the primary perpetrator, or was there more to the story, hidden beneath layers of lies and manipulation? As the courtroom emptied, one thing was clear. The web of betrayal that led to Rachel Cooper's death would leave a lasting scar on everyone involved. The murder of Rachel Cooper revealed a chilling web of secrets, betrayal, and deceit hidden beneath the surface of a seemingly idyllic suburban life. What began as a tragic domestic incident unraveled into a case that exposed the darkest corners of human relationships: an affair, financial corruption, and a tangled conspiracy that left one woman dead and 3 lives irreparably shattered. Emily Jennings now serves a life sentence, a stark fall from grace for a woman who once thrived on her charm and influence. Jack Cooper, once a respected businessman and family man, faces a long prison term for his role in covering up the crime and enabling the events that led to Rachel's death. And Michael Hayes, an outsider drawn into the chaos, walks free after serving a reduced sentence, leaving many to question whether justice was fully served. For Rachel's family, the verdicts brought some closure, but the loss remains a wound that time will never fully heal. The quiet streets of New Rochelle, once a haven of safety, now carry the weight of a tragedy that neighbors still whisper about. Could anyone have seen the signs? Or was this a crime destined to unfold, hidden behind closed doors? This case forces us to confront unsettling truths about the fragility of trust and the consequences of secrets. As we close this chapter, we leave you with this question. How well do you truly know the people closest to you? A sobering thought, as the shadows of Rachel Cooper's story continue to linger in the minds of all who hear it.